What's going on? Welcome to Project Freelance. It's time for another episode. This is season 8 of the show, and I am your host, Kay Inigonio. I am a freelance videographer, photographer, drone pilot. I'm a metal screamer. I explore abandoned places, but mostly I freelance. That's what I do for a living, and this podcast is all about freelancing. I have guests on every single week to chat with you about their tips and tricks for building a business as a freelancer, whether they're a photographer, audio engineer, NFT artist, entrepreneur of any kind. This is the podcast that you have been looking for. So thank you for tuning in. If you're brand new, please hit the subscribe button so you're notified every single Monday when a new episode comes out. If you guys actually want to see my guests' photos and listen to this podcast at the same time, there is a video version of this podcast on the Project Freelance YouTube channel. So if you guys head over there, subscribe, and check out the podcast, you can watch this episode. It's awesome. I love it. Before we get into this episode with Spawnzone, who is a photographer based out of Los Angeles, I just have to give you guys a little bit of information about the show, about myself. First of all, this is Project Freelance. We've been doing this show since 2017, and we are now on season 8. If you guys want to go back and check out previous episodes, please do so. If you like the show at any point in time, if you're on Apple Podcasts, please give a rating and feedback on the show. It helps the podcast grow. It helps us find other freelancers just like you. And if you do that, take a screenshot of it and send it to me at Project Freelance on Instagram or Twitter, and I will send you a signed photo print that I have taken as a way of saying thank you for supporting the show. Secondly, I have a photography book out called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. It's full of photos and stories of my time exploring abandoned places, which is what I do when I'm not freelancing. So if you guys want to check that out, if you guys want to get some No Tracers merchandise, backpacks, duffel bags, snapbacks, things like that, photo prints, head to justtheletterk.com/no-tracers. Thank you guys. Lastly, I need to thank our partner on this podcast, Liquid Death Mountain Water. If you've never heard of it, well, get ready to murder your thirst in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water, a water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. So if you want to give Liquid Death a try and get 10% off your order, hit the link in the description or go to liquiddeath.com, pick up a case or however many cases of water you want, a set of koozies, and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout and you'll get that 10% off. All right, without further ado, Spawnzone, please introduce yourself and how long you've been freelancing and what you do as a freelancer to the Project Freelance audience. Welcome to the show.
My name is James Gross. I'm based in Los Angeles, California. I'm a freelance photographer, videographer, and I got my start back. Well, I've been shooting for upcoming now 14 years, but professionally, like in the EDM industry since 2016. And I prefer to be freelance. You don't have to, worry about being too tied down to one company. You can kind of float around. Get more opportunities, and I've shot for lots of different brands, artists, event companies, shot at multiple festivals, and I've traveled a pretty good bit with my camera. I just do photo and video pretty occasionally now, since I do focus more on my other ventures. I do management as well and event curation. But since we're open post-COVID, things have been picking up. So.
Nice. So what inspired you to first pick up a camera? Like when did you do that? When did you get into photography, and what was your first camera?
So I got started back in when I was 16. My father gave me his old Minolta film camera, and back at the time I was kind of getting a lot of trouble. I was definitely a troublemaker back in high school and college. And he gave me that, I think, kind of in hopes that I would kind of stay busy and occupied. So I took a year of photography class in high school, my sophomore year, and it was one of the classes that I was pretty proficient in, so it kind of like stuck with me. I kind of just kept growing with it. I got addicted to shooting, and then as I got older, partying and stuff in high school, I was essentially like the guy in high school with the camera. So I always had it at parties and like when I was hanging out with friends, and I would go out and we'd do like urban decay, so like abandoned buildings and urban exploration, all that. So we would just go out, take photos, take some portraits, and I didn't really get super serious about it until I was like 20, and then after that, after I kind of fell in love with it in high school, I ended up, my father got me a Canon Rebel T1, I believe, and then I later on got a T3i, which are both cropped, nice little starter cameras, and I've been shooting with Canon ever since. I'm definitely like a Canon fanboy for sure, but yeah, just been with Minolta film cameras and Canon DSLRs pretty much my whole career.
Nice. It's crazy to talk about like urban exploring. So I have another podcast called No Tracers, and it's all about exploring abandoned places. I interview people from all over the world that also explore, and that's what I do in my pastime. And I really got into that when I moved to Los Angeles. Like I went to a TFTI photo meet, and we ended up like somehow talking about, exploring abandoned places, and I ended up finding like a little crew to run around with, and it's been super cool to like do that over the years, and I love abandoned stuff. So it's interesting that you brought that up as well. And it's dope that you shoot on film. A lot of photographers start out on digital and they stay there. And like for myself as a videographer, I studied in Dubai and Australia because I was like growing up overseas and stuff. So I studied film and have a bachelor's in film production. And we didn't get to use film because in Australia, it was so expensive to transport it to the other side of the country to get it developed and send it back. So like we just didn't do it. So I feel like I missed out on the opportunity to like learn film, to learn that medium. Do you have a preference shooting film or digital? Like do you prefer one or the other?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, for non-work related stuff, I do prefer film. And I always recommend it because I do have like entry-level photographers approaching me on how to get started or kind of different tricks. And I always recommend starting with film because it forces you to be picky about the shot. You're not going to be so wasteful. Digital camera obviously has, it's different pros and cons. You can, do continuous shots, you can review it on site and things like that. But I do really enjoy like the kind of like surprise because, you go ahead, take it to like a photo, like a development studio and they develop it and, it's a few days later or a week later, a month, however long it takes you to kind of get around to it. And then sometimes you find photos, you're like, oh yeah, I remember taking this. And it's just kind of cool. Just the way that the colors are, it's just like the whole process kind of, I don't know, it's just really cool to kind of go back to my roots. So when I do like solo like landscape trips, like out to the mountains, I'll bring a film camera with me as well. But yeah, I just always recommend doing film because it really forces you to care more about the shot and kind of calculate it a little more. And yeah, it's just a really good way for photographers to kind of sharpen their tool with framing and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And I highly recommend everyone at least try to shoot on film at least once because it's an experience, you don't get 30, what Sony's new camera does like, I think it's like 30 frames a second or so, I don't even know, but it's something ridiculous. And I think that shooting on film, you only have like a certain amount of shots. And so you can't just like burst, so I think it's a different way of, it kind of slows you down a little bit as a photographer.
Yeah, you're more in the moment, I feel like. And yeah, it's really fun to kind of go back to like the old school methods of how people are shooting because obviously over time with computers and editing, it's definitely shaped photography in a different way where it's more of a digital medium. I'm still kind of old school in terms of photography where like I believe that 90% to 95% of the shot should be straight off the camera. So like how you are shooting it, I don't really spend too much editing. I only really use Lightroom. I will use like Photoshop if I'm doing like, like more high-end portraits, take care of the blemishes and things like that. But I prefer to just kind of do like the old school run and gun style and just essentially have the image be finalized when you upload to your computer, just little minor tweaking on the colors.
Yeah, I'm the same way as far as like editing goes. Like I'll have people ask me to do photo shoots and they'll be like, "Oh, can you like edit out my cellulite or like whatever?" And I'm like, I don't know. No, I'm not the one. I'm not the one. You gotta find somebody else. But that's just a personal preference of mine. I'm the same kind of way. Like I like it to be as straight out of the camera as possible, similar to what you were just saying. So as a freelancer, when you first started, what were your rates like? You don't have to give me exact numbers, but like what were your rates like versus now, and how did you find your worth in the industry?
Yeah, that's really good. So for the first, like I said, I started doing it more professionally in like 2015, 2016-ish. And with that, I didn't really have a portfolio. So I was lucky to kind of tag along with a couple of photographers I'd met. And we went to Avalon and I did a free shoot. And then I ended up like meeting the guy who threw the event, like the event company owner. And I started working with them for like a few months. I did like 2 or 3 shoots for them. And then they actually brought me on as like their first like residential official photographer who was paid. So back then, because I shoot everything: portraits, weddings, festivals. It's different price points for different projects. But I would say I did about in total like 3 to 6 months of free work just to build my portfolio and show people the level of work they'd be getting. And I started charging like around that time, like $50 for like portraits, just enough to like, gas their back or whatever it may be. And then for like live event work, I think it was around the same price point. And then as I started getting better, more equipment, my name started getting bigger. And I started like really getting into it and figuring out like what kind of output and general like kind of like parameters for my clients. Cause they usually ask me like, like what's the turnaround time? How many images am I getting and things like that. I have always overproduced. So that's like one thing that I kind of got shit for a while back from some photographers, which were more experienced than me because they were like complaining. I was like essentially tanking prices and like lowering the words. And it was actually kind of funny. Like at the time, I didn't really like understand like where they were coming from. But now that I'm like more experienced, like I definitely do see it. But it also at the same like time, it's like it's your business, so you can freely set the rates that you want. And that's how I got a lot of clients. Was I was undercutting a lot of my like competitors, and then I was always delivering more images, quicker turnarounds, and it was just higher quality work. So I would say about like a year and a half of shooting events, I started bringing my rate up to like $100 and $150, and like $200 a shoot, and like $300 an hour. So I would say from 2016 till now, my rates have gone up from $50 an hour to about $350. So I do about $350 for promo work, for like portraits and things like that. And then I do have a little lower rate for events because it's not so much like post stuff, and there's a lot less that needs to go into it because you're just arriving on site and taking images and floating around. With portraits, you have to pose them in different locations and things like that. So currently for my photos, I'm doing about $275 an hour per set. And then of course you can do like bundle deals and different ways to kind of draw clients in. So I do like bundle packs, and I also like for big companies, I'll do like tiered rates. So if they book me for more hours, I'll lower the hourly rate, kind of throw some freebies and things like that. So there's like kind of different ways to do it in terms of business. And I do like a couple services, I pair services together and things like that. But yeah, it's taken me about like 5 years of being in the industry to get my rates up to the levels they are. And even now, I'm definitely still undercharging for the amount of work that I give and the quality. So I do try to raise my rate like once or twice a year, about 10 to 20 bucks per hour more. And over time, it definitely does add up. So before the end of the year, my rate for portrait work will definitely be $400 per hour.
Nice. That's awesome. Like I love that you've found your rate, and I love that you continue to increase it based upon not only the work you do, but the value you're giving to people. I think that that's super important. And, a lot of new clients that probably come to you are probably like, whoa, $400 an hour. Like, that's crazy. Like, why would I pay something like that? But like to realize the value you're getting out of a person that's creative and what you're getting, like the product you're getting. I think that, I compare it oftentimes because people will say the same thing to me about my rates. Like, oh, I can find someone to do it cheaper. And I'm like, okay, think about it this way. If you go to a tattoo artist that charges you $50 an hour versus a tattoo artist that charges you $250 an hour, which tattoo artist do you think is going to give you better work? It's the same thing with photo, video, any type of freelancing, audio production, whatever it may be. The higher the rate, the better the quality is going to be. And so I think people need to realize that. And it's something that's often overlooked. For you, have you ever, so this question, this is one of my favorite questions because I feel like it's inevitable to happen to all freelancers at least once. Have you ever been screwed over on a job, not paid for something, ghosted by a client, anything like that?
Yeah, actually on, I believe, like 3 different occasions. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened to me in the last like 2 or 3 years. And I've had a pretty established name in this industry, like during that time frame. So I did have a client, and me and him are cool now. Like he apologized, and we're on good terms. But one of the most memorable ones was this client that I had. I did really, really great introductory, and that's what I'll do too. Like you have to also level with the client, and you have to explain to them like why your rates are a certain way. And I gave him a nice intro rate for photos and videos for an event. I got him over the content in a super timely manner. Like I got him photos the next day, and then I got him a recap video within like 4 days, I believe. And he ended up like posting all the work up, yada yada. I believe he also had given me a deposit. No, actually, no, he didn't give me a deposit at the time. This was before I even started taking deposits, which is why I have them now. But did the work, gave him the content, he posted it up, and then I had followed up on payment for my work. And crickets, he didn't respond. I was like, okay, I'll give it some time. So week passes by, hit him up again, nothing happens. And then like 2 or 3 weeks go by. I'm like, okay, this guy's clearly taking advantage of me. Obviously, he can post it up without an issue, respond on things, but he has no time to at least let me know. And I'm not even like a hard ass about it. Like I understand that people go through, financial things. Obviously, you shouldn't hire someone who can't afford them, but that's a different topic. But I'm very reasonable with my clients because I do understand they're not just getting a product; they're also getting a service. So I do treat my clients, extremely well. I make sure, communicative. I do respond in a really timely manner. I get the work done in a reasonable time, and I give them great rates for great amount of content. So I realized this guy was ghosting me, and I went ahead and I did a little name and shame on Facebook because I think at the time I only had like 3,500 friends, but now I'm like almost maxed out at 5K. So I have really good reach on Facebook, pretty good reach on Instagram. And I posted up that, and I even tagged him, and I said, I need to find this post actually, but I said something along the lines of, I gave one of my clients, great work. He hasn't responded to me. He's obviously ghosting me. He's not paying me. And I think I finished up with like, where's my money kind of thing. And then just like within an hour, I think there were like over 100 comments, like 5 or 6 shares, and just like over 100 reactions to the post. And everyone's just like literally roasting the dude, like in the comments. Like I just named him, but then like obviously I have like a lot of clients and friends and supporters, and they just went in on the guy. I kind of felt bad, but so I posted that day. He was quick to respond, and he actually ended up paying me like within a week of this happening. So he told me that he was going through some financial troubles, and I told him, like, I understand, like, I'm not like hard pressed for the money, but at least like communicate with me, and let me know, like, hey, 2 weeks, that's totally chill. I literally don't have an issue with that. But when people start like ghosting you, and they're obviously like don't have an intention of paying you, then that's like when it becomes like a serious issue. So that was like, I think that was actually, that was the last time. That was about 2 years ago that anyone's like done that to me. So it has happened on other occasions, but I did end up getting my money. Like another time, I shot a name set at Exchange. I was shooting an artist like 2 before the headliner, and got done shooting him, and a manager came down to talk to me, and he's like, hey, like, a photographer bailed on us, like, can you do some photos and videos? And I think we wanted some like raws, just like some 30-second like raw clips, but I always color grade them. So he asked me for content for their artists since their guy built. Obviously, with that being said, like they should pay you more money because you are coming in clutch and you're essentially like, the emergency person in the situation saving their day. But I was like super chill. They gave me like, it was even like, I think it was like $100 under what I usually charge. I was like, okay, cool. I mean, I could just stay for another hour, make some more money, get some more content, make some more connections, that kind of thing. So I ended up shooting it, and then he asked me for the photos rushed, of course, and the videos, and I got him videos within 24 hours, and they didn't post it for like 3 or 4 days. I was like, okay, I got you the content really quickly, like whatever. And then same thing, I hit him up for payment. I sent him an invoice. He didn't talk to me for like literally weeks. And at the time, I was actually working as a debt collector. So I'm able to like get people's information super easily. So I ended up finding out his address, and I just sent him a text. I was like, do I need to have my attorney send you a letter at this address? And immediately he responded. He's like, no, it's all good. Like my partner will pay for it, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So I was like, okay. I was like, you can like communicate with me. And then he tried pulling the card like, oh, well, you can always like give me a call. And literally like, I'm pretty like tactical with things. So I told him like, I do everything in writing so that it's documented, so that you can show that it's been weeks that you haven't even tried to even contact me or, send me some money. It was only like $200. Like, come on, man. Like, you're a manager for a good sized agency. You're managing someone who's direct report for a headliner. Like, it shouldn't be an issue. And like, I'm super chill. Like, even now, like, even for like all my clients, I only stress the deposit to make sure they lock it in. And I told them if you need to take 2-3 weeks to give me the back end payment, that's totally fine. Like, that's why I work the hours that I do, because I'm consistently having work coming in. And like, I even had clients that do payment plans. Like I had them do like $50 like every 2 weeks. Like I'm not stressing the money. I just want I want them to give me the same level of respect that I give them.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like, it's so hard for people to wrap their heads around that. And I don't understand why. I just literally this past week have been dealing with a client that I thought was ghosting me, but it turns out like their texts weren't going through or whatever. Because I'm the same way. I like things in writing so that we have a documented exchange of everything that's going on. But I guess their texts weren't going through, so I had to call them, and they were like, yeah, I sent you a text reply, like letting you know your payment was on the way. And I was like, I never got that. And like, it was just like, communicate with me, like I have an email you could have emailed, and I tried emailing them, they didn't email me back. So I was like, what's going on here? Like, you guys need to sort this stuff out. It can be very frustrating when that happens, but I'm glad that those situations mostly worked out for you. I've definitely had times where people just flat out never paid me for the work I did, and that was before I did things like take deposits and have things in writing, and just went by like their word over the phone. And that's not always the best way. We should definitely have contracts, have things in writing, things like that. So for those challenges you face in the industry, how did you overcome some challenges that you faced? And this could be things like learning how to shoot live shows, or, learning how to shoot portraits better, things like that. Like, what are some challenges you faced over the years of being a freelancer?
I think the biggest challenge I faced was just getting my foot in the door with some of these companies. Just like with that, it was just kind of lack of, not really experience, but just portfolio. Because, I started doing it, EDM wise in 2016, and, sorry, my Siri's coming up. And then I had a pretty small portfolio, but obviously, if someone's hiring you to do a job, they want to make sure you can do it sufficiently. So I will just say getting my foot in the door and building my name for myself was the hardest part. And that was just a ton of networking, just me going out as much as possible, trying to, essentially get people to be, have them be like my first client. And then from there, when you start delivering and making a name for yourself, people start coming back, they start, tagging you, giving you more opportunities. And from there, I mean, honestly, once you have a name, once you have a portfolio, it's really easy to get in the door. So that's how I've gotten, other opportunities. And that's why I love photography. It's essentially like a portfolio of work. Like when you do a gig, that opens more doors for you just because you did it. You have the proof, you have it, the photos, people can see. And the cool thing about photography is you can literally compare side to side. So you have, a couple of different photographers who are looking for the same gig. The client can easily pull up both of the pages, compare photos, and from there kind of figure out more of the back end in terms of pricing and how much work they're actually going to get. So yeah, definitely getting my start was the hardest part, because it's like you have to have experience to get some of these gigs. So just a lot of just going out and back then I didn't have a vehicle. So just, taking Ubers to gigs, and obviously that costs money. Sometimes I break even, and kind of getting my flow too, and figuring out how I can be more effective as a content creator, because it changes from, a hobby to an actual profession where you're making money from it and you take it super serious, and that essentially becomes your livelihood. And, the more money that you do make, the more money you can invest back into your brand. You can get better equipment. You can, and that's great for your clients too. They're benefiting as well. You have better lenses, a better, camera body and things like that. You can do the job more effectively. So getting my foot in the door and becoming a better content creator were the two things that were hard. But that just comes honestly with time and experience and just putting the hours in. There's no better teacher, for this craft than actually being hands-on and learning it. And it's a very reactive kind of craft, because, if you show up to like a nightclub, and you can gauge how dark it is and what your settings need to be, and how quickly you can react to things. And there's just so many variables when it comes to live events, lights changing, people moving, it just being generally a dark setting. So your camera, most cameras do kind of struggle when it's dark or in low light. So it's just kind of getting in the groove and figuring out what my value is too. And when people started, telling me that I need to charge more for the amount of content I did, it's kind of just listening to other people who want the best for you.
And do you have a preference on the type of things you shoot? I like to call it the genre of things you shoot: live shows versus landscapes versus portraits. Do you have a personal preference on which one you like doing more, or is it pretty even across the board?
Honestly, it's pretty even. My top three things to shoot would definitely be live concerts, landscapes, and urban decay. Those are definitely my top three things. So those landscapes are my bread and butter. I don't do those too often, but I do a print shop, of course, and things like that. And I think I get the most reception on my landscapes.
Awesome. So what questions did you have as a freelancer when you were first starting out?
Trying to dig into the memory bank. Honestly, one of the biggest things I would always ask older shooters was how did you get this opportunity? And they would just tell me, look at the flyers of events you want to shoot, look at the artists and the event companies that are involved in it, and just reach out to them. So that was one of the questions, was how do I get these opportunities? Obviously closed mouths don't get fed. So you do have to do the outreach, and you do have to be ready to accept no's, they're not interested or it's just not their style. Since I do kind of come from a metal background as well, in terms of music, I do have a darker style naturally. So it's not for everyone, which is totally fine. I do kind of go for the more moody look. But I just had to be more accepting that my style's not for everyone, which is totally fine. And, at the end of the day, we're creatives, and this is our art. It's our craft. It's what we love to do. So we don't necessarily have to bend for those people. But if you do want the opportunity, it's recommended, of course. So yeah, just kind of had to get my foot in the door, what I should be delivering my clients in what time frame. And like I said, I would always just create just insane amount of work. I think one of my highest returning shoots I've done was an hour portrait photos. I sent them 180 edited images. So it's 180 edited images for 60 minutes, which is pretty good. And then that's also how I justify my rates too, because you can also tell your clients hey, you get this many photos for this much, and you can use the photos for this amount of time. So that's another thing that kind of helps level the client. And I think one of the other questions that I maybe had back then would probably be just equipment wise, and just figuring out what's needed for the job, differences between crop sensors and full frames and mirrorless cameras, and what works best in low light, and what lenses are needed for the job, wide angle lens, fish eyes, and things like that you don't really find in too many other styles of shooting. fisheyes are pretty much just limited to like live events and to like skateboarding stuff. So you don't really see too much like actual fisheye stuff like landscapes or, portraits, because it does kind of skew and distort the image in a kind of weird way, which can be kind of unflattering for your client. But that would probably be one of the other questions I had as a beginner.
And then how did you come up with your username on Instagram? Like, where did Spawnzone come from?
So I used to be like a huge like gamer, like first person shooter. So like a lot of Call of Duty, a lot of Counter-Strike and things like that. So Counter-Strike 1.6 is actually like the first, their like development team was actually the first one to utilize the term spawn zone. So like a spawn zone in a video game is where you as a player like essentially like pop up. So just like little zones where, you can start your game. So I just needed like an Instagram name at the time. So I was like, what's a good name for like a creation zone, or like the opposite of a black hole where like content's just like pumped out? And I was like, I can use like a gaming term like spawn zone. So to me, it's like the opposite of black holes. So like when I'm like standing somewhere, it's essentially like a spawn zone for like the images. Nice. So that's kind of like where I got it from.
I love that. It's so creative. I love hearing about people's usernames because, and I love doing this podcast because there's a person behind those photos, and we often forget that. So thank you for coming on Project Freelance. If people want to reach out to you with questions, or if they want to hire you for something, where can they find you? Obviously, I'm going to put your link tree down in the description, but let people know where they can find you online.
Yes, it's pretty much Spawnzone across the board. The only thing that I couldn't use Spawnzone solely for was Twitter. So it's Spawnzone photos on Twitter, Spawnzone on IG, Spawnzone on Facebook, and then of course my link tree has all my links to my master classes, Patreon, and my print shop. So. All
right, guys. Well, that was Spawnzone. I hope you enjoyed listening to his story, and I hope that you enjoy Project Freelance. I hope you come back for more. I hope you hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time a new episode comes out. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for enjoying season 8 with me. If you want to come on Project Freelance, please DM me at Project Freelance on Instagram, or tweet me at Project Freelance, and we'll get you on the show. I would love to do more of these. I would love to have your friends, your colleagues, anybody on this show that's a freelancer. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating and feedback, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. It helps the podcast grow. It helps us find other freelancers just like you. And I'll talk to you guys next week for another one. Stay strong, keep enduring. Go out, go create something.